From service operators to enterprise to application providers, data centers are evolving as business models shift, customer demands grow, and technology capabilities develop. On this segment of TI Now from TIA's Connectivity Jam in Dallas, Texas, to tell us more about this changing role of data centers is Hugh Carspecken. He's Chief Executive Officer at DartPoints. And Hugh, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Did I pronounce your name correctly, by the way?
That's correct.
Okay, good. I want to ask you right from the very beginning, and really based on the introduction, is the consumer demand outpacing your ability to build infrastructure to support that demand?
Yes, with the evolution of different types of applications, the need for more critical infrastructure, more enhanced infrastructure is going to be required. 5G is a perfect example of that. Where in some estimates they're looking at 13 times the number of towers to be able to provide that type of infrastructure. As a micro edge data center that a lot of those towers will be feeding into, it requires me to pull this out farther and farther out to the edge where the data is not only being produced but also being consumed.
So the basic model of your business is pushing that micro data center to the edge. Does that mean the edge of the network? What's the definition of edge compute to you?
Well, as I just mentioned, my definition of edge, and there are a few definitions floating around, but my definition is where the requesters of the information are also the producers of that information. This will be with people producing YouTube videos that are being compiled. We mentioned self-driving cars where requests for telemetry or some sort of road information is being processed. And right now I'm engaging with enterprises who are producing their own cloud on site and consuming it on site. So the request is not going into a core infrastructure and coming back. It's actually coming into an edge node and being worked at that node.
So now are technologies like artificial intelligence allowing you to operate your data center better?
Absolutely. I've had a few companies that have, since my micro edge data centers are dark data centers, which means they are unmanned, that all that information feeds into our network operations center, and we are able to handle everything remotely and are starting to look at AI applications that will allow us to look at the critical infrastructure, to look at access. One company is actually trying to promote robots, believe it or not, that can actually go in and do a walkthrough for compliance to assess information. That's a little bit out, but I thought it was interesting. But the ability to man these and to be able to have the human interaction on it is going to need to go down a little bit just to keep the cost down and to keep the speed fast.
So give me an example of really the domino effect that would occur, let's say in automotive, and the amount of data that would come through one of your micro data centers.
Well, so the systems that are about to be created for the automotive industry with regards to self-driving cars are going to be very complex, and not only just from the computational side, but also on the regulation side, the compliance side, the human side. So there's many things that are approaching this. This is very easily said rather than done. But simple things as car wrecks, information in terms of how to make a car from being heavy and bulky to something light and sleek, fun to drive or fun to be in. These are all influences that will go into this industry, and we've seen these trends many times before. But we're starting to see how are they going to push out data. How are they going to pull in remote areas? For example, when you've got cars that eventually go automated, how do the responders get out there in the event of an issue? So there's a lot of things that are coming into the system that will dictate how these are deployed and how this resource is being consumed.
I think it was interesting earlier, before we started this conversation, you talked about total cost of ownership and how that's going to really be redefined as we redefine data centers.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us that example again for our viewers as possibly cutting out some of the cost out of that process, maybe cutting the telecommunications cost out of your TCO?
Absolutely. When you've got a hub and spoke network, then all data, all requests go in from the edge into the core, then come back out. So there's a mile that's transported with regards to telecom. Very valuable mile, but at the same time, not all data needs to make it into the core all the time, and definitely not all at the same time. So there's a hierarchy of data, critical data versus not so important data, we do it today with our computers with quality of service and class of service. But there is certain information that will need to be processed very quickly. Our enterprise customers that look at us now, a micro edge data center allows you to play with the total cost of ownership because you're placing your data now where you want it, where you feel it's going to be the most efficient, not only from a performance standpoint or a latency standpoint, but also from a cost standpoint. We've had some customers who have placed their private cloud within the micro data center, within the same building, that have been able to cut their point-to-point circuits down. And so now their bandwidth that they're consuming is either a connection to a disaster recovery site, which is a lot more efficient, or to the internet. And so they actually are removing an individual line item in their budget, which allows them greater control over their overall budget.
I know you had a panel here at the TIA Connectivity Jam called Redefining Data Centers. In fact, that's the title of this discussion here. But let's say in a few years, the title was Data Centers Redefined. It's more finality to that, right?
Okay.
What would we be talking about in a couple of years in this space?
Fully distributed data centers that have the same look and feel as what you would expect from a traditional data center. You will see a standard approach. You would actually see a standard body. You will see a cooperation across data centers as they engage. Right now, their customers are all in a come-to-me mentality. When you are fully distributed, there are people who, a micro edge data center will be able to play to certain strengths, but not to others. There are customers of mine that make a lot of sense and others that need to go somewhere else. And so that ecosystem is going to, the analogy I like to use is that of a tree where the larger traditional data centers are the trunk of the tree, where you have huge processing that branch out to the regional data centers, those that are still large, still complex, high interconnectivity, but farther out from the tier 1 markets. And then the micro edge data centers end up being the capillaries, the leaves, if you will, resembling very much like the human body and how it operates.
Hugh, thanks for your time being here.
Thank you very much.